This is Dr. Mary Ruwart, and when I want to find out what's going on in New Hampshire, I go to freekeen.com.
This program is brought to you by freekeen.com. Freekeen.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeen.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeen.com.
Okay. I'm here with Dr. Ruwart. And you've been around a while in the Libertarian Party. How did you ever get started in it?
Well, in college, I read Ayn Rand's works, and I was very impressed. And then about 10 years later, I was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, working, and someone ran an ad for a Libertarian Party meeting. I went. I learned more. I sort of got drafted to be a candidate, and the rest is history.
When did you decide, I understand libertarian politics enough that, or answers, I've got your short answers book. When did you decide to start writing? Like, how does that cross over to becoming an activist to a writer?
Well, I realized in the late 80s that I didn't really understand our foreign policy very much. So I was reading about it, and all of a sudden, I recognized that our foreign policy never worked because the ends and means are intimately related. So, for example, if we use bad means like taxes and drafting people, we're going to have problems with the results because the ends are, the means basically determine what ends we get. And this was at the level I would call almost a revelation because everything kind of came together. I realized that there's no difference between the practical and the principled. I realized that when people recognize that aggression harms them, even if they think they're profiting by today's system, then they eventually realize that they give their own happiness away when they aggress against others. And so at some point, we were going to have a libertarian world. And after this all kind of came together for me, I had like a week on cloud nine. It was better than any drug. And I wanted to share this with other libertarians because I think that having that hope and understanding of how powerful our philosophy really is makes all the difference.
Let me ask you a question about how you feel when you hear people that drop out of the Libertarian Party because they're just frustrated with the way it's going, or I know you've been in and out of the party for a long time. What would you say to people that are frustrated and dropped out?
Well, sometimes it's very difficult to tell how good things are going to happen. I never would have dreamt that the Berlin Wall came down the way it did so suddenly. And that's just one example of how things can happen that are very pro-liberty that we'd never think of. The Internet's another one. I mean, it's our new free press. Who would have ever predicted that? So things happen without planning, so to speak. The market works in mysterious ways, I guess you could say that. And so I have a lot of faith that eventually we will have a libertarian world, even though I can't tell you how it's going to happen. And probably nobody can, but it's probably something none of us would ever imagine.
And what point, for you personally, would you get to a point where you lose faith in the national system? All governments fail eventually. At what point would you say, okay, it's not worth my time anymore to be involved in a national sense? What would have to happen? What's your linchpin where you just threw in the towel?
Well, I'm not sure there would be a place like that for me. I might shift from, saying, working in the party to working in a more educational aspect, but I'm not sure that I would ever leave it because when I was doing this in the 80s, we were the only people out there talking about ending the IRS, the only people really talking about getting rid of the income tax, getting rid of the Fed. Now those are all popular issues. And when we were out there in the wilderness, so to speak, being the only ones talking about that, I asked myself, why am I doing this? It's never going to change.
Right.
And the answer I came up with was that I was not just doing it for other people, although that was part of it. I mean, I was doing it because I felt that I was being called to do it, and that to refuse the call would be to really, I guess, take away a great deal of happiness from me. For some reason, I am called to do this, and it feels great doing it.
So you'll always go some form or another of activism.
I think so, yes. It might take more of a form of teaching or writing, but I don't think I'll ever really stop.
The first time I met you was at the Liberty Forum in New Hampshire, and are you a supporter or a member of the Free State Project? Could you explain your relationship with the Free State Project?
Sure. I've always thought it was a great idea. I haven't been called to move there yet, but I think it's a great thing, and I do support the idea. I think it's a great experiment, and that's kind of the thing we all need to be doing. This is the marketplace at work. Some people think, well, let's go to a state and kind of take it over. Other people think, well, let's educate the public. Everybody thinks a little differently, and that's great because we probably need it all. So I think it's a wonderful thing that it's happening.
Oh, great. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.